A recent Business Insider article discussed how a higher proportion of CFA Level 1 candidates are now college students. Said differently, it's becoming more and more likely that the people taking the exams are in university, still studying for other things in their life. In some ways, this is sort of surprising, but in other ways, it makes perfect sense. So let's check out this article. Business Insider talked with one of the product manager guys at the CFA Institute about a month ago, and he shared that about 1 in 5 Level 1 candidates are university students. And when you consider that the CFAI only just expanded the availability of the exams to university students in pretty recent history, that is sort of surprising. I'm not exactly sure if that means that university students are just much more excited to take the exams, or if it means that the population of those taking the exams up until about 3 or 4 years ago, let's say in their 30s, is drastically decreased. So now college kids are just a higher percentage. We know that overall enrollment is a lot lower than 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm thinking it may be some of the latter argument. And one of the pieces of information that the CFAI shared about this is that the average age of a new enrollee dropped from 24 years old to 23 years old. Again, that could be described by the same trend that I'm hypothesizing. The Institute attributed that increasing proportion of candidates being college students to the fact that college students are becoming more and more interested in taking finance programs while they're still students in universities. I think that logic runs counter to the generally accepted theory that this current generation of 16 to 24-year-olds, which I believe is Gen Z, is actually lazier and not working as hard towards professional progression at this point in their life compared to generations of the past. That makes it a little surprising to me to see, hey, more CFA enrollees are actually college students. These kids are just ready to knock out exams while they're still in the study mode phase of their life. I'm just thinking, you're saying people 20 years ago didn't want to do that as often. Maybe that is true. Maybe the identity of the CFA exam has changed a bit in the last 5 years. I certainly believe that to be true, and maybe part of the reason that this trend is shifting. But at the end of the day, I think one of the best points the CFAI made in this interview with Business Insider is that students coming from lesser known or basically universities that don't really have the brand recognition in the finance industry that some others might, those students are finding it relatively more important to have extra credentials on their resume in order to compete well with people that went to Harvard or other places like that. So that argument's very true. Again, I don't know how that's different from 20 years ago, but we do see a trend, at least in a bit of an uptick, amongst a proportionate number of candidates being in college. Now let's talk for a minute about if that's actually a good idea, because I don't really know that I would recommend that to most people. Personally, and I've said this on this channel many times, I find it much more important to actually build up a little bit of experience in the industry, especially when it comes to something as significant as the CFA program, where you're gonna devote 3, maybe 4 years or more of your life towards. You really wanna have your foot in the door in a certain area within the finance industry to fully understand whether or not that's the area of the field you wanna be working in. If you really wanna be a buy-side investment analyst, after a year of working in that industry, or maybe even only 3 or 6 months, you'll have a better indication on whether or not the CFA exam is going to be applicable to the long-term career progression that you're going to try to pursue. Because if you start studying for the CFA Level 1 and pass it, and maybe even the Level 2 exam, while you're still a university student, you certainly run the risk of ending up doing something like real estate or sell-side investment banking work for a longer period in your career. Areas of finance that the CFA designation is not that it's not respected, but it's usually less often considered a necessary requirement to operate in those fields. And honestly, the information in the CFA program is probably less applicable to compared to any equity analyst, buy-side type of roles. However, if you're a university student and totally convinced that you are going to pursue a career in which the CFA designation would be very beneficial for you to have, not only in terms of the knowledge base, but also having the credentials on your resume, then I still have another potential consideration before I would recommend that somebody take the exams while still in college, which is, what's your course load like? Because personally, I felt like in college, I certainly could not have taken on any extra work. The amount of work I had was too much already for me to turn out a good GPA. I was not as great of a student as I thought I was. and I certainly wasn't as good at studying as I became once I fully dove into the CFA program later on in life. I'm just one example, obviously, this is anecdotal, but that would have been a bad idea. And I don't think I'm totally unique in that. I think there are plenty of finance students that will probably pursue careers in fields, maybe portfolio management or whatever, where the CFA charter would be very applicable or beneficial to their careers. But that doesn't mean they should start studying for level 1 when they're also doing their senior papers and studying for their senior finals, wrapping up their undergrad program. Now, the counterexample there is, but I was enrolled in what I would consider a relatively rigorous undergrad finance program. I've talked to plenty of people from less notable universities, to be honest, that say, dude, my last semester was an absolute breeze, or even like, my junior and senior years were an absolute breeze. I just had general business classes. Now, maybe me saying just general classes is not a totally fair summary of what some people have experienced in these less notable universities, but my point is, if you don't have a serious course load, then yeah, that makes it more possible for you to pursue the CFA program. If you're catching my drift here though, there are just a few dominoes that really need to be falling in place in order to make that type of a strategy work. I'm sure there'll be plenty of you watching this video where it does. I just don't want the fact that Business Insider is reporting that, hey, a stronger or a larger proportion of CFA exam candidates are university students to make everybody go, wow, I need to do this thing while I'm in college. I mean, it is a massive undertaking. I would say the 3 levels of the CFA program are actually more work and definitely more difficult than any 4 years of undergraduate studies at almost any university. So you've got to understand that you're getting into something that might be even bigger than what you are finishing up currently in your life. And again, there's the element of how beneficial is it going to be. I'm still of the opinion that the CFA program is the greatest finance designation on the planet, maybe the greatest academic pursuit on the planet in some senses. So I don't want to knock the thing. It's just like, make sure it's right for you before you do it. The last thing to consider is that many employers, when you're looking for a first-year finance job, they're not going to hire you if they can tell that you're not pulling tons of women at your college or university that you're just graduating from. So a bigger focus, in order to actually set yourself up for a really strong foundation jumping into your finance career, a bigger focus during your last semester of university or college should be getting with as many girls as you can, because it's not too easy to rack up those tallies on your resume in the bottom right-hand corner, where obviously every finance recruiter is looking for those tallies to see exactly how many women you've scored. But it could be a lot more important than having even all 3 levels of the CFA program passed by the time you graduate university, and heck, being a charter holder altogether. A lot of hiring managers in the finance field just do not care about your professional designations or even your education whatsoever. It's going to be a lot more based on how successful were you out there where it really mattered most, when you were battling your other alpha males in the jungle for the most prime female targets during your university years. So prioritize that first and foremost. I guess that's really the 4th consideration. Then, if you're doing well in that department, then you can enroll in the CFA exam in college. Thanks for watching.